February 23, 1943, Telefunen headquarters, Berlin. The magnifying glass trembled slightly in Obstidl Runge's hand as he examined the copper block salvaged from the wreckage 3 weeks earlier. "This cannot be real," he wrote in his classified technical report. No nation could achieve such miniaturization while simultaneously producing such power output. Through the laboratory windows, he could see the smoke rising from the bombed factories across the city. Tangible evidence of Allied air superiority. Yet here on his workbench lay physical proof that the technological gap was far worse than anyone in the German High Command had dared to admit. The device before him, retrieved from a downed British Sterling bomber near Rotterdam in the night of February 2nd, measured barely 10 centimeters across. This cavity magnetron, as the British called it, generated microwave radar frequencies that rendered every German countermeasure obsolete. It was elegant in its simplicity, devastating in its implications, and utterly beyond anything German science had achieved. What neither Runge nor his colleagues yet understood was that this single copper block would explain a mystery that had been costing Grand Admiral Karl Donit's 40 submarines per month, a hemorrhaging of men and machines that threatened to lose Germany the Battle of the Atlantic within weeks. The mathematical certainty of German defeat was being written not in naval strategy but in electromagnetic wavelengths that German radar detectors could not see. The psychological transformation had begun. On that freezing February morning in Rotterdam, Dutch resistance membership watched German soldiers cordoning off the crash site with unusual urgency. The Sterling bomber, serial number R9264 from 7 Squadron RAF, had been returning from only its second operational mission when flak had torn through its port wing. The crew of 7 had died instantly in the crash, but their sacrifice would prove more valuable to the Allied cause than they could have imagined. The aircraft carried Britain's newest secret weapon, the H-2S ground mapping radar system, designed to allow bombers to navigate and identify targets through cloud cover and darkness. At its heart lay the cavity magnetron, a device so revolutionary that Winston Churchill himself had agonized over its deployment, fearing exactly what had now occurred. The bomber had been part of a raid on Cologne following H-2S radar's combat debut against Hamburg just 3 days earlier on January 30th, 1943. General de Luftner Wolfgang Martini, Chief of Luftwaffe Signals Intelligence and one of Germany's most senior radar experts, was alerted to the crash within hours. As the officer responsible for all German radar development and signals intelligence, Martini understood immediately that the Rotterdam crash might provide answers to questions that had been haunting German commanders for months. His position as head of the Luftwaffe's entire communications and radar infrastructure made him uniquely qualified to assess whatever technology the British bomber might contain. Martini dispatched his most experienced technical teams to the crash site. Their initial reconnaissance confirmed his worst fears and greatest hopes simultaneously. The bomber's belly contained equipment unlike anything German forces had encountered. The rotating antenna assembly, the cathode ray display system, the sophisticated power supply, all pointed to advanced radar technology, operating on principles that German engineers had theoretically discussed, but dismissed as impractical for operational deployment. But when heist technicians carefully extracted the transmitter assembly from the wreckage, examining the component that powered this mysterious system, what they found defied German understanding of physics and engineering. The magnetron itself, British model CV-64, consisted of a solid copper cylinder approximately 8 cm in diameter and 12 cm long. 8 cylindrical cavities had been precision machined into the copper arranged symmetrically around a central cathode. The entire assembly was surrounded by powerful permanent magnets. It was deceptively simple in appearance. Yet initial field tests suggested it generated enormous microwave power at frequencies German equipment could neither produce nor detect reliably. Martini ordered WWII transported immediately to Berlin under armed guard. He had seen enough to know this discovery might explain why Donuts' U-boat were dying at unprecedented rates. The British had achieved something German science had declared impossible. A compact, powerful microwave radar system that could be mounted in aircraft and ships, providing detection capabilities against which Germany had no defenses and no countermeasures. The journey from mystery to revelation had actually begun months earlier in the gray waters of the North Atlantic. Throughout late 1942 and early 1943, U-boat commanders had been reporting increasingly disturbing encounters with Allied aircraft that seemed to possess supernatural detection abilities. Kapitan Lit Hans Joachim Schuwanka, commanding U-43, had filed a report in December 1942 that typified the growing crisis. His boat had been transiting the Bay of Bisque on a moonless night, running on the surface to recharge batteries. When searchlights had suddenly blazed from directly overhead, there had been no warning from the MTOX radar detector, no engine noise, nothing to indicate an aircraft's approach. Depth charges had bracketed his diving boat, causing severe damage that forced an emergency return to port. "We were blind," Schwantke wrote in his war diary. The MTOX gave no alarm. The aircraft appeared as if materialized from darkness itself. Only luck saved us. We heard the bombs falling and crash-dived with seconds to spare. Our detector should have warned us minutes in advance, giving us time to dive safely. Instead, we had no warning at all. Either the British have developed radar our detectors cannot sense, or they are using some other technology we do not understand. Whatever the explanation, we are being hunted by enemies we cannot detect until the moment of attack. Similar reports flooded into U-boat headquarters in Paris throughout the winter. Boats were being caught on the surface at night with no warning. Aircraft seemed to see through darkness and weather that should have provided cover. The MTOX radar detectors, which had given U-boats advanced warning of aircraft equipped with older ASV Mark II radar systems operating at 1.5-minute wavelengths, had become worse than useless because commanders still trusted them to provide adequate warning. The statistics told a grim story that would become catastrophic by spring. In November 1942, German U-boats sank approximately 119 merchant ships totaling 729,000 tons worldwide, losing 13 submarines in return. December saw 60 merchant ships totaling 330,000 tons sunk with 5 U-boat lost. By January 1943, sinkings dropped to 37 ships, while U-boat losses climbed to 7. February saw 34 merchant ships sunk and 17 U-boat lost. The exchange rate, once heavily in Germany's favor, was collapsing at an accelerating pace. Admiral Karl Donitz promoted to Commander-in-Chief of the entire Marinen, January 30th, 1943, while retaining direct control of U-boat operations. Through his subordinate staff watched these numbers with growing alarm. His headquarters maintained detailed plots of every U-boat position, every convoy route, every engagement. The patterns emerging from these plots made no sense according to conventional naval warfare logic. U-boat approaching convoys in darkness were being intercepted before they could attack. Boats transiting the Bay of Bisque under cover of night were being bombed with precise accuracy. Submarines running submerged during daylight were somehow being tracked and depth-charged. Allied aircraft appeared to possess supernatural ability to locate submarines in conditions where visual detection should be impossible. The weather conditions during many attacks ruled out visual detection entirely. Yet the attacks came with devastating precision. Corvette and Kapitän Gah Hessler Donuts' son-in-law, who had married his daughter Ursula in November 1937, served as first staff officer at U-boat headquarters. Huller spent weeks analyzing combat reports, seeking explanation for the mysterious losses. The pattern was clear but incomprehensible. Allied detection capabilities had improved dramatically over a very short period between late 1942 and early 1943, suggesting new technology rather than improved tactics or training. But what technology could see through darkness, clouds, and fog? What could detect a submarine's small conning tower from miles away? What could track a periscope wake or snorkel exhaust in conditions where human observers would be completely blind? The questions multiplied faster than answers could be found. Donuts convened crisis meetings with Germany's top scientists and engineers. Throughout January and February 1943, the discussions revealed disturbing ignorance about Allied capabilities and troubling complacency about German technological superiority. German radar experts insisted that NORADAR system could effectively operate at wavelengths shorter than about 50 cm due to fundamental power generation limitations. The vacuum tube technology available, they argued, simply could not generate sufficient power at higher frequencies to make shorter wavelength radar practical for military applications. The MTOX detectors designed to detect Allied radar operating at 1.5 wavelength should theoretically warn OVNI radar-equipped aircraft. The system worked by detecting the electromagnetic emissions from aircraft radar, giving U-boats several minutes warning to crash dive before the aircraft could close tow tack range. Yet clearly they were not providing adequate warning anymore. Something had changed in Allied capabilities. But what? Some scientists speculated that the Allies had developed infrared detection systems that could sense engine heat from U-boat diesel exhaust. Others suggested acoustic detection, though this seemed implausible at the operational distances involved. A few voices mentioned the theoretical possibility of centimetric radar using advanced magnetron technology, but this was dismissed as impractical. Germany's own research into such systems had concluded they offered no tactical advantage worth the enormous development investment required. The British could not possibly have solved problems that had defeated German engineering. The experts assured German science was the best in the world. If German engineers had concluded centimetric radar was impractical, then it must be impractical. The Allies must be using some other approach, perhaps multiple detection methods working in combination. The idea that Britain, suffering under years of strategic bombing with its industrial base under constant attack, could have developed revolutionary radar technology superior to anything Germany possessed seemed absurd to many German experts. This complacent certainty would shatter completely when Runge's team at Telefunen began examining the Rotterdam device. The magnetron arrived in Berlin on February 5, 1943, accompanied by photographs of the complete H-2S installation and detailed reports from the crash site. Runge assembled Germany's top microwave specialists for what would become known as the Rotterdam Working Group, or Arbeitsschaft Rotterdam. Their task was to determine exactly what the device was, how it worked, and most critically, what capabilities it provided the Allies. The first meeting of this working group would occur on February 22nd or 23rd at Telefunen's Berlin offices. The initial examination on February 6th revealed the magnetron's basic operating principle. Within hours, the cylindrical cavities acted as resonant chambers, generating and amplifying electromagnetic oscillations, as electrons spiraled through the magnetic field created by the permanent magnets. It was conceptually similar to earlier splitter node magnetron designs that German engineers had experimented with in the 1930s, but executed with a level of engineering sophistication that shocked the German team. Dr. Otto Hackenberg, a young physicist assigned to document the examination, would later recall the moment of realization in interviews conducted after the war. When we first energized the magnetron using laboratory power supplies, the frequency counter registered 3.3 GHz, a frequency we could barely measure, let alone generate with any power. The output meter showed 40 kW of peak power. It was like discovering the enemy possessed artillery when you thought the battlefield limited to rifles. We understood immediately why the MTOX was useless. It was built to detect meter wavelength radar operating around 1.5 m or 200 MHz. This device operated at 9.1 cm wavelength, more than 16 times shorter. Our detectors were completely deaf and blind to this radiation. The electromagnetic spectrum the British were exploiting was entirely outside the range our warning receivers could detect. We had been fighting blind, unaware that the enemy could see us clearly while we saw nothing. Runge's team worked around the clock for 2 weeks, reverse engineering the complete H2S system from the wreckage and their covered components. The magnetron powered a rotating antenna that scanned a 360-degree arc beneath the aircraft. Returns appeared on a plan position indicator cathode ray display, creating a map-like image showing coastlines, cities, rivers, and terrain features with remarkable clarity. For the first time, bomber crews could navigate and identify targets in complete darkness or through solid cloud cover. The system had been designed primarily for strategic bombing navigation, allowing Pathfinder aircraft to mark targets for following bomber streams regardless of weather conditions. British bombers could now attack Germany in weather that had previously provided natural protection, but the implications for submarine warfare were even more profound than the bombing applications. The same cavity magnetron, technology adapted for air-to-surface, search radar designated ASV Mark III could detect a submarine's conning tower from 20 meters away in any weather, day or night. The small radar cross-section that had previously protected submarines from detection meant nothing against this sensitive high-frequency system operating in the centimetric wavelength band. Worse yet, the microwave emissions were completely undetectable by German radar warning receivers. All existing German detection equipment, including the MTOX system that U-Boat relied upon, operated in thermometer wavelength range. The MTOX could detect radar operating between 1.3 and 2.6 meter wavelength, covering the frequency range of ASV M2 radar that had equipped Allied aircraft through 1942. But this new centimetric radar operated at 9.1 cm, a frequency 17 times higher than anything German warning receivers could detect. U-Boat were running blind into enemy attacks, their defensive systems obsolete without their knowledge. The technological surprise was complete and devastating. On February 23, 1943, the Rotterdam Working Group presented their findings to German military and industrial leadership. While no documentary evidence confirms the personal attendance of either Reich Marshal Hermann Göring or Admiral Dönitz at this technical working group meeting, both were certainly briefed on the findings. Representatives from every major German electronics firm attended, including engineers from Telefunen, Siemens, AEG, and Lorenz. Senior Luftwaffe signals officers and marine technical specialists filled the conference room at Telefunken headquarters. The mood was somber. Runge began his presentation with a statement that would be recorded in the minutes and later recovered by Allied investigators after the war. We must report with complete frankness that the British have achieved a technological breakthrough of extraordinary significance. The cavity magnetron represents an advance in microwave generation that exceeds German capabilities by at least 3 years of normal development. More critically for current operations, the device enables radar detection systems against which we have no countermeasures and no defenses. The presentation detailed the technical specifications of the CV-64 magnetron. 8 resonant cavities machined into a copper block, operating at 3.3 GHz frequency with 9.1 cm wavelength. Peak power output of 40 kW. Compact construction suitable for aircraft installation. Robust design capable of withstanding combat conditions. Production quality, indicating established manufacturing processes rather than experimental prototypes. The implications were devastating. If the British could manufacture these devices in quantity, and the production quality suggested they could, then every Allied aircraft and ship could potentially be equipped with radar systems against which Germany had no defense. The MTO warning receivers were useless. The extensive network of German radar installations operating in thermometer wavelength range would be increasingly obsolete. German night fighters, German anti-aircraft defenses, German naval vessels all relied on radar technology that the British had leapfrogged by an entire generation. When Göring was briefed on these findings, possibly at the Humboldt Flak Tower in Berlin, where their assembled H-2S system was demonstrated, his reaction was reportedly one of considerable consternation. The Reichsmarschall, who had boasted in 1939 that no enemy aircraft would ever bomb Germany, now faced evidence that British bombers could navigate and bomb in any weather conditions using technology Germany could not match. Donuts, when briefed through his staff channels, understood the implications more clearly than anyone else in the German High Command. His U-boat force had lost 39 submarines in the first 2 months of 1943, 17 in January and February combined, though records show 7 in January and 17 in February for a total of 24, with additional boats lost in December, bringing recent losses to 39 over the 3-month period. If this trend continued, the U-boat campaign would collapse within months. Kapitan Zur Eberhardgott, who served as Donuts' operations chief and had been promoted to Kontadmiral in March 1943, maintained detailed statistical analysis of U-boat operations. The numbers told an increasingly grim story. In the first quarter of 1943, German U-boats were being lost faster than they could be replaced, despite shipyard production running at approximately 20 to 24 boats per month. More critically, experienced crews were dying faster than training programs could replace them. The meeting attendees reached several sobering conclusions that were documented in classified reports later captured by Allied forces. First, Germany could not replicate the cavity magnetron in operationally significant numbers before 1944 at the earliest. The precision machining required to create the resonant cavities, the specialized copper alloys, the powerful permanent magnets using cobalt that Germany lacked in sufficient quantities, and the manufacturing expertise required were all beyond immediate German capabilities. Even a crash program would take months to establish production lines. Second, developing effective countermeasures would require at minimum 6 months. A new generation of radar warning receivers tuned to centimetric frequencies could theoretically be designed, but production and installation across the entire U-boat fleet would extend well into 1944. The technical challenges of building receivers that could detect 3.3 GHz emissions were formidable given Germany's limited experience with microwave technology. Third, and most devastating, the British almost certainly had variants of this technology beyond what was captured. The Rotterdam device operated at 9.1. Some Allied scientists likely had already developed, or were actively developing 3 cm systems that would render even new German countermeasures obsolete before they were deployed. The technological race was not merely lost. It was unwinnable in the war's current time frame given the Allied head start and superior industrial capacity. Donitz absorbed these briefings with growing understanding of the catastrophe facing his command. His U-boat headquarters, which had relocated to the Paris area in March 1942 after the Saint-Lazaire commando raid exposed the vulnerability of the previous Lorient location, maintained detailed plots of every engagement, every loss, every tactical development. The maps on the operations room walls told the story more clearly than any statistical analysis. Red pins marking U-boat positions had thinned dramatically across the North Atlantic. Blue pins indicating Allied convoy seemed to flow through areas werewolf packs should have intercepted them. Black pins, the markers of U-boat losses, clustered along transit routes through the Bay of Bisque and in the operational areas where boats encountered Allied air patrols. "We have been fighting blind," Donitz told his senior staff in briefings following the Rotterdam device examination. "Every advantage we believed we possessed has been neutralized by Allied technology we did not know existed. Surprise attack at night meant nothing when the enemy could see in complete darkness. The vast expanse of the Atlantic provided no concealment when radar could detect a conning tower from 20 m away. Our radar warning systems gave us false confidence while providing no actual protection against this new threat." The question facing Donitz was stark. What could be done? While German industry scrambled to develop countermeasures that might not arrive until 1944, Hessler proposed several tactical adaptations. All the U-boat commanders would be informed that radar warning systems were unreliable and should not be trusted to provide adequate warning of air attack. Boats would be ordered to remain submerged as much as possible, surfacing only when absolutely necessary toward charge batteries or transit at higher speed. Anti-aircraft armament would be increased on all boats, though this was recognized as a desperate measure against aircraft that could detect Hubbert-Long before the boats could see the aircraft. Most critically, Donitz and his staff began preparing for the possibility that the U-boat campaign in the Atlantic might become unsustainable. If losses continued at current rates while Allied shipbuilding capacity continued expanding, the strategic mathematics would become impossible. Germany would be losing the war of tonnage, unable to sink merchant ships faster than Allied shipyards could replace them. March 1943 proved both the apex and the beginning of the end for Donitz's U-boat force. The largest convoy battles of the war were fought that month with massive wolf packs of 30 to 40 boats attempting to overwhelm convoy defenses through sheer numbers. For a brief moment, it seemed the strategy might work, despite the growing Allied technological advantage. Convoys. HX-229 and SC-122 sailing together through the North Atlantic in mid-March were attacked by approximately 40 U-boat from 3 wolf packs. The battle raged from March 16th to 20th, 1943. Merchant ships totaling 141,000 tons were sunk, the highest losses from any single convoy battle of the war. The British Admiralty issued an internal assessment that Germany had never come closer to severing Britain's Atlantic lifeline, but the cost to Germany was unsustainable. The U-boat attacking these convoys lost one boat definitively, U-384, with several others damaged. However, the broader March statistics showed 12 to 15 U-boat lost during the month, depending on classification methodology, with many losses occurring in areas outside the major convoy battles. The mathematics were inescapable even when achieving tactical success in sinking merchant ships. The strategic picture was deteriorating. Allied shipyards, particularly the rapidly expanding American construction program, were producing merchant vessels faster than U-boat could sink them. The Liberty ship program had reduced construction time from over 200 days in 1941 to an average of 42 days by 1944, while individual ships like the SS Robert E. Peary were built in record time, days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes in November 1942, these were propaganda achievements rather than standard production rates. Nevertheless, American yards were launching approximately 3 Liberty ships every 2 days at peak production, a rate of roughly 1.5 ships daily. German U-boats sinking an average of 3,000 to 5,000 tons per boat before being destroyed could not match this production rate. As long as Allied shipyards could replace losses faster than U-boat could inflict them, the campaign represented strategic defeat disguised as tactical success. The only way to win the tonnage war was to maintain an unsustainable exchange ratio while simultaneously avoiding losses that Germany could not replace. The true catastrophe came in May 1943, the month that would become known among U-boat crews as Black May. Throughout the month, Allied aircraft and surface escorts equipped with centimetric ASV Mark III radar and Type 271 shipboard radar savaged the U-boat force with unprecedented effectiveness. The convoy battle for ONS-5 in late April and early May marked the turning point. This slow convoy of 43 merchantmen protected by 16 escorts was attacked by approximately 30 U-boat. The Germans managed to sink 12 to 13 merchant ships but lost 6 to 7 U-boat, with an additional 5 to 7 severely damaged. For the first time in a major convoy battle, the U-boat suffered losses approaching their successes. The exchange ratio had become unsustainable. 2 weeks later, convoy SC-130 demonstrated complete Allied dominance. Of 37 to 38 merchant ships in convoy, 0 were lost despite attacks by 25 to 33 U-boat from 3 patrol lines. The German forces lost 3 to 5 U-boat, including U-954. The decisive Allied victory represented the last seriously threatened convoy of 1943. Throughout May, the losses mounted relentlessly. On May 4th, U-209 was sunk in the North Atlantic with all 46 crew lost. On May 5th, U-447 and U-663 were both destroyed. May 6th saw U-465 and U-563 sunk. May 11th brought losses of U-89, U-86, and U-456. May 12th saw U-528 depth charged with all hands lost. May 15th brought the destruction of U-176. May 19th saw the loss of U-273 and U-954. The loss of U-954 on May 19, 1943, carried particular personal weight for Admiral Donuts. The Type 70 CU boat commanded by Capitan Lieutenant Odo Lowe carried among its crew Lieutenant Zuri Peter Donuts, the Admiral's youngest son serving as watch officer. The boat was attacking convoy SC-130 when it was detected by the River-class frigate HMS Jed and the B-class sloop HMS Essenin. The British escorts prosecuted the contact with Hedgehog anti-submarine mortars and depth charges. The Hedgehog weapon introduced in 1942 represented a significant tactical advance over conventional depth charges. Rather than exploding at preset depths, regardless of whether they hit the target, Hedgehog projectiles exploded only on contact. This meant that when explosions occurred, they confirmed a heat rather than simply disturbing the water and making sonar tracking difficult. U-954 was destroyed with all 47 crew members killed at coordinates 5454 north, 3419 west. The loss was reported to Donuts by secure telegraph. U-954 attacked and sunk by British escorts HMS Jed and Sennen. Hedgehog weapons achieved direct hit. No survivors. Your son is gone. Donuts did not pause operations or take leave. There would be time for grief after the war if Germany survived. For now, his duty was to the approximately 40,000 submariners under his command, the living who still depended on his decisions. The personal loss, devastating as it was could not be allowed to interfere with operational responsibilities at this critical moment when the entire U-boat campaign faced potential collapse. By May 22, 1943, the operational U-boat force had lost between 41 and 43 boats during the month. Depending on classification methodology, U-boat net lists 42 boats lost with 10 torment 65 men killed and 1,837 survivors. Other sources cite 41 combat losses, or 43, including boats stricken from operational roles. Regardless of the exact figure, the losses represented approximately 25% of operational U-boat strength, making the month catastrophically unsustainable for German naval operations. Dönitz called his operations staff into emergency session on May 24, 1943. The plot board showed a catastrophe unprecedented in U-boat operations. A quarter of the operational force destroyed in 3 weeks. Casualty rates exceeding any previous period, experienced commanders dying faster than training schools could replace them. New boats being sunk on their first patrols before crews learned combat survival techniques. The youngest generation of officers, the men who would have led the force in 1944 and 1945, were drowning in the Atlantic at 23 and 24 years old, their potential forever lost. On May 24, 1943, Dönitz made the most painful decision of his career. He drafted the order that effectively conceded defeat in the Battle of the Atlantic. To all U-boat Atia, due to superiority of enemy location equipment and overwhelming air coverage, North Atlantic operations are temporarily suspended, effective immediately. All boats currently in the North Atlantic are to withdraw to positions southwest of the Azores. Boats transiting to operational areas are to proceed to Bisque ports. Further operations will await development of improved detection equipment and enhanced anti-aircraft capabilities. We have not surrendered. We have recognized reality. The immediate statistical impact was dramatic. In June 1943,